Hello everybody and welcome to a new video from MinnMax. MinnMax is a place about games, friends, and getting better. If you're very much looking forward to God of War Ragnarok, this is the right channel for you. You can help support us in a big way by hitting subscribe on our YouTube channel because we're going to be celebrating God of War Ragnarok the biggest way we know how, which is with a game club series called The Deepest Dive. It is a game club discussion where we're breaking this game up into 3 sections, talking about it in exhaustive detail with the MinnMax community. So if you're looking for the best, most thorough discussion about God of War Ragnarok on the internet, we promise this channel is the place for it. So please subscribe to our channel, or you can go to patreon.com/MinnMax with 2 N's, where you can unlock the podcast version of that hours and hours and hours long conversation about God of War Ragnarok, which will be good, I promise. And you can also submit your thoughts over there on patreon.com/MinnMax with 2 N's. Submit your thoughts over there, and we'll read them during our discussion for The Deepest Dive. Thank you so much for supporting independent games media. We very much appreciate it. It's tough out there. All right, on with the chat.
Hey there, welcome to a special, preview for God of War Ragnarok, a discussion between myself, Kyle Hilliard, and Jacob Geller. Hello.
Hello. You're honestly starting very low key for what is potentially the biggest game of the year, one of the biggest games of the year. We've played God of War Ragnarok.
That's right.
We did it.
Yeah, and to set the table a little bit, we can talk about the first 5 hours of the game. And I think Jacob and I are both pretty committed to it. We really don't want to spoil anything, honestly. Like, I think we want you to hear what we think about the game, but we don't want to spoil specific story beats.
Yeah,
and
so
anyway.
We have a couple rules of like, hey, definitely don't talk about this. But I think even beyond that, like, we're going to be given kind of very general impressions of like how it is as a game. But like, I think you should be able to listen to this and then play those first 5 hours and experience the same thrills and chills that you would have, if you went in without listening to it.
And chills there are, because Fimbulwinter is here.
Fimbulwinter.
It's funny. I always thought it was like thimble, but this with the subtitles on, I did learn it was thimble.
Look, one thing about this game, you gotta like that Norse, those Norse naming conventions, because they really are throwing them out thick and fast.
Yeah, Atreus, like the actor, I clearly like took the time to make sure to pronounce like weird places with extra F's and V's next to each other. I've honestly been impressed. Like, wow, he's nailing it. Which I guess it would be kind of weird if Atreus couldn't.
Yeah, but hey, still impressive. So I guess were you? I've kind of, I feel like almost too much talked about how I was not in love with the first game on this podcast. What are your, how do you feel about God of War 2018?
I loved it. I'm a boring old mainstream person who loved it, thought it was fantastic, loved how it was like what they achieved while still totally acknowledging everything that came before God of War. Like, they took a character that was established in this different era of video game storytelling and adapted it really well to this new era. And I loved it. I loved the whole thing. Which leads me to continue to be very excited to play Ragnarok.
Yeah, and as someone who did not love it, I gotta say, liking this one more.
That's honestly...
Although it's interesting, because I think it's like, I would say the best part of the first game is the first like 3 hours, because that fight with Baldur in the first game is just so exciting and like, oh my gosh, look at what they're doing here. And I think this game has a better opening than that one, just in like the amount of stuff that happens. There are some questions from the MinnMax community here, and Groffles asked, do they have a bombastic scene to experience in the first 5 hours? I would say the first hour and a half is like nonstop, just like unbelievably kind of expensive, exciting, like it really gets off fast.
Which, I mean, God of War has always been good at. Like, God of War 3 and 2 and this, like, always have amazing openings. And this has a great opening, This is what when it comes time to start playing, like, make sure you're, in the best, give yourself some time. And
I would say put aside an hour and a half, to kind of like get through all of the big the big moments. So I played that and I was like, oh my gosh, this is so good. And then what's interesting is like, I would say after that, and tell me if you disagree, but it like, then it kind of turns into like, oh yeah, this is like God of War 2018. You know, like it pretty quickly kind of gets back to the style of gameplay that, or, you know, like almost the kind of overarching style of exploration and just kind of like walking around, finding chests, fighting guys, having conversations. But even with that, I just think that the story is more interesting this time around. And so I think that's kind of led me to enjoy this one more than the previous.
Yeah, I was honestly kind of surprised to hear you say like that you like it so much more, so to speak. Like, and this isn't meant to be negative about the game at all, but it's kind of that you know, if you like the first one, you're gonna like this one. Like, there's some familiar, just the way the story is told, the way you're sort of exploring. Like, it's not
the way the puzzles work, the way
it's not a reimagining
it feels,
in that regard.
I would say probably, you know, one of the cool things about it, but also a potential criticism, is like it is such a direct follow-up. You know, like it almost doesn't feel like any time has passed at all. Like they don't give you a big 3 months later or whatever, but like,
well, real quick to touch on that, someone did ask a question. Shazira asked, do you need to play the prior game to fully enjoy what's going on? There is a recap. There is an optional recap in the menu, which I think is pretty solid at just giving you the beats of what happened in the first game. And I think you should watch that if you haven't played, if you're just coming into this one.
Yeah. Though also I would say like there's almost the reason is that it's a new, big, exciting game, but I would say like there's almost no reason to play this one if you haven't played the last one, just because like they are similar games and they're very story centric, and the 2018 comes first, you know? So it's like, if you're interested in this game, play 2018 because it's a pretty similar game.
They do a pretty good job of, because they do a pretty good job of Atreus kind of talking a lot about what happened in the last game. Like he'll be like, oh, remember this, or there'll be a new character and Atreus will be like, well, yeah, we had to kill that guy, you know? Like, he does a pretty good job of that. And I think, like, let's say you just like haven't been playing games lately and you've got a brand new PlayStation 5, and that's maybe the reason you want to just check out the new big game this year, and it's God of War Ragnarok. I think you could get away with it. Like, you would want to read a little bit about what happened, but your best bet is going to be, I think, like you said, Jacob, you should probably play the first one if you're going to play it. It's a good game. We're not like telling you to waste your time.
Yeah, I mean, and it's cool in another kind of like series legacy thing that like the most exciting end and start of any game series I can think of is God of War 2 ends, like the original God of War 2 with you like climbing Mount Olympus, and God of War 3 starts with you climbing Mount Olympus. And this is not like
suddenly it looks way better.
The stakes are not quite as immediately high, but it does feel like this thing that the series is good at, of like, it really feels like they knew where they were going in the first game, and now they are doing that thing, and it's like it has not been disappointing in like the direction they've taken the story so far.
No. One thing we should talk about, I think, is combat a little bit. Another question from Shazira. I promise there are more questions than just the ones from Shazira, but they asked, you know, how's the combat feel? Is it just as fluid as from the first game? And I mean, it feels...
Well, I think they say as you'd want from this game,
which is want, right.
an interesting distinction, because again, it's like, well, it feels pretty similar to the first game. Yeah. But did you have something you were going to say about it?
No, I mean, it feels like on par. I don't think you really, and I'm trying to like remember, I don't think you really start with any new skills necessarily. No,
but what you do, there are definitely some tweaks that would be easier for me to remember if I had played the first game immediately.
You but I would say
weapons. The biggest thing, is like you play a full half of the first game with just the axe before getting another weapon, and in this you have both of them more or less right off the bat. You know, it takes like 30 minutes for you to get the second one. And so that, to me, I was frustrated in the first one with the combat feeling pretty limited with just the axe. And so them giving both of you, like both of the weapons to you immediately has been one of the things that's made me enjoy it more, just because I like feeling more flexible and like I can swap between them and do stuff.
Yeah, you like to switch back and forth, because I don't. I just kind of like that axe, man. I just kind of stick with that axe. Let's see. Any other questions on here that we want to? We talk.
I mean, similar to the talking about the weapons. Rich's Brew asked, "Do you start with any of the skill tree from the prior title? Do you have equipment amnesia?" Some of the options that were on the skill tree previous are unlocked right off the bat, but basically no. You start. There's a line from Kratos that's like, they kind of acknowledge like, hey, didn't you have like a bunch of armor and stuff in the last game? And there is like a one line kind of like, oh, well, this is why we don't have it anymore. Yeah. That is, I think, very funny.
On that note, real quick, and maybe this is just me just not remembering from the original game, or just being so enamored with the sort of seriousness of the, you know, the big epic things happening in the first game, but I'm finding this one funnier. I don't know. Do you feel?
Oh, definitely.
Okay. Yeah, I'm like surprised at how funny it is in a way that I really like.
You know, part of that is Mimir is with you right off the bat, the head, and he is just like the funniest character and is able to throw out a lot of lines. But yeah, there's you know, the dwarven kind of like equipment guys from the first one are back in a big way and are certainly kind of chattering a lot. And so yeah, even though Kratos is not Kraken wise, but like there are lots more jokes.
But the thing about it though is like Kratos in this game, and maybe he was in the first one, I just don't remember, but he is the best straight man like ever.
Oh,
like,
sure.
Period. Mm-hmm. Like he is so good at just like the straightforward reaction. I'm going to say one thing in response to this.
Yes, I think I know exactly what you're talking about. And yeah,
I probably took a screenshot of it. But he does it often. It's not even just like, oh, there's one joke early on. It's like there's so many times where people ask him a question and his response is just so good, and just like you're just like, that's great.
Yeah, I felt in the first game, I felt kind of beaten down by how many interactions were Atreus trying to be a child and Kratos yelling at him. Essentially, I just felt like that happened over and over and over. And although that character interaction is still here, it's like there's a lot more variety, and obviously their relationship has changed from the first game. And so like that's still going on. They haven't totally moved past it, but I just feel like there's more flexibility in the storytelling to kind of like do different things. They're not just mad at one another.
Yeah. I feel like one big thing which Fred asks about here is there more boss variety this time? I know the last game there were a lot of trolls and dragons. I feel like that's sort of like something that it feels almost like in response to that you're fighting a lot more different types of smaller bosses, mini bosses, and types, to the point where there's even some enemy types that I don't find that interesting to fight. Right. But they're different, at least.
Yeah, you know? There have been more big bosses, and then there are also kind of normal enemies that they put a boss health bar on. But like either way, I'm happy to see them. You know, like I it's kind of funny because that's also something that happened from the PS2 God of War 1 to 2. Is the first God of War had like 3 bosses, and then God of War 2 on the PS2 had like 40. And it feels similar, but in a way, that I'm enjoying.
Let's see. SG Mills asks, are there things in the game that could be spoiled with a single screenshot? I mean, yeah, I think so. I guess they're asking this just as a way to like tread lightly, right? As the game comes out and they haven't played it yet. I mean,
my biggest gasp moment several of my biggest gasp moments in the hours that I've played so far actually happen in the first 2 hours, you know? And so I think just if you can play that part as quickly as possible, my guess is people are really going to want to talk about what happens there. But then once it turns into more kind of typical, you're exploring, you're doing stuff, the storytelling also gets more kind of conversational. And so there haven't been as many like huge revelations past those first 2 hours.
Yeah, and I think even like certain characters that show up and stuff, I think have even been shared in like trailers and that kind of thing.
If you've been watching the trailers, a lot of it will be familiar. Yeah,
like early on, like I mean, obviously tread carefully. Like, please avoid spoilers for this game because it's so fun to get to sort of experience the revelations in real time. But like off the top of my head, as much as I've played, I don't think there's anything that like a single screenshot, maybe a screenshot.
It's like
spoil, but
a YouTube thumbnail wouldn't, but a YouTube thumbnail with text could. I guess,
yes,
you know,
if the captions on there, maybe
you could spoil things in a sentence for sure.
Yeah,
but yeah, it's you know, it actually it goes into Fred's question, which you're on here, which is the single shot camera going on? It certainly is. You know, a lot of the big scenes in this are kind of taking advantage of that camera, you know, doing stuff. They have not. I was also a little disappointed in this. Fred asks if they've changed going into the menu to be more dead spacey and not break the shot. No. There is in fact more loot and upgrades in this game. Or at least there are things that I did not realize I could upgrade. And then like hours in, I was like, oh wait, this has an upgrade path too.
Yeah.
So that part is again very similar to the first game.
But they do cool stuff with the single shot. Like I would argue it's not a novelty. I think there's actually some real storytelling value in that consistent shot. Especially in the first 5 hours even. In ways that I won't spoil. But which is cool. Like it is. I love the single shot, but at times in God of War 1, it would feel like you probably could have cut here. It would have been okay. But I like it.
They've done, and I mean, and there's you know, on that there is the similar kind of like there are still kind of cleverly disguised and not so cleverly disguised loading screens in terms of like squeezing through small spaces and what like you can. I would say it does not feel like a massive technical step up from the first one, in part because this game is also coming out on PS4. But it's like the first one felt, you know, it technologically was about as high quality as any game this generation has been so far. So like it doesn't feel like a step down.
Yes, yeah, it still looks great, you know. Yeah, for sure. We got a couple more questions here, and then maybe we'll wrap it up. Ray Luaz asks, any noticeable changes in Atreus' involvement in combat or exploration? Jacob, I don't know how you feel, but my answer is no at this point during the first 5 hours. Again, not I don't mean that in a bad way. I just like
no, but he's still mostly you press square to tell him to shoot an arrow in combat. In at least these, you know, what I've played so far. And
did you have that moment too where you realized you could do that kind of late and you're like, oh my God, this is so helpful. I should have been doing this the whole time.
Right. I something that I'll say actually, which is, you know, totally individual to each person. But I would say if you are a fan and have played the 2018, I found the balanced difficulty level on this game a little easy, and I kicked it up to the one above balanced and have really been enjoying that level of combat. You know, I think that totally just depends on how familiar you are with the series. It's like I do have to think about my blocks and parries and stuff, but like I like God of War to be kind of a hard game, and so I've been really enjoying that level of difficulty.
Yeah, I'm doing normal, and I'm not as good an action gamer as you, I don't think, just in general. And and I've been dying like enough, right? Like enough where I feel like I'm not completely without challenge, but like a mini boss. There was one in particular that took me like 3 tries or so, which is like, I like that. That's perfect for me, and then maybe I die once in an encounter here and there. But then when I hit the checkpoint, it's not a problem. And that's perfect for me,
There is still that funny thing of like things happen in the cutscenes that really reinforce that Kratos is a god, and that like he can take punishment that people can't. And we're like, driving that home, very specifically here. And then like in combat, you'll still get killed by like a lizard sometimes. And it's like, really? The god of war? but overall, I think combat's fun and whatever.
To Drew RWX, it does do the game mechanics support the story being told? Well, sometimes you get killed by a lizard and
yeah.
But I think the answer to that question is, I think so. Like it's a game that's not afraid of being a video game, which I appreciate. Like
there. In ways that kind of reminded there are a lot of. It does feel like the story has expanded a lot. A lot of the gameplay does feel very reminiscent of the first game, even in that it's like, oh, there are these chests with the 3 like bells, and you have to like look around and ring the 3 bells, and it's like those were in the first game, they're still in there here. Solving the puzzles feels basically the same, like it's
very video gamey. Like you're never gonna do that in The Last of Us, is like but I like that stuff, man. Like I don't know, it works for me, and it doesn't take me out of the story really, because it's such a high fantasy world that they've built. I don't mind that I have to ring bells or light fires to open chests. I think it's fun. I like it.
In response to Drew's question, it's another kind of like, if you felt that they did in the first game, then they also will here. There are times when the game asks you to slow down and walk, and you have a conversation, and sometimes you run while big things are happening. And so it's like, it's, I think it feels very much like 2018. And if that method of storytelling worked for you, then this one almost certainly will as well.
Yeah. And by the way, I did not mention, apologies, that these questions come from MinnMax council level supporters. They were able to submit some questions to us about the first 5 hours of God of War. So if you want to submit questions for content like this in the future, take a look at those Patreon tiers and look at the MinnMax council level. And this is the last question that we have from Danny Phantom with 2 N's, which is something that I was kind of racking my brain to remember. Jacob, they ask of those first 5 hours, how many until a title card appears?
I
don't
remember
a title card.
It's certainly not. Yeah, like a giant thing happens and then it's like God of War. Well, maybe it does, and I'm not remembering. I don't think it does because I don't think like they don't break the world immersion. Like there's nothing on screen that we see that the characters couldn't. So if they did do the title card, then like Kratos would be like, why does it say God of War Ragnarok?
Yeah. I don't think there is, which is
but
cool,
they do the thing that they did again in 2018, where it's like the start screen and then you press start and then the game just starts playing like from there, which is cool, and I like that.
I think that's been that way even since the original. Like
you're right. Yeah,
I love it.
Yeah,
it's cool. Yeah,
that's so. I forgot that they did that on the original games. Yeah, what a good God of War thing. There are also, I've been pleased that there are more, because Atreus now knows some of Kratos's deal from like before the first game. There have been more lines referencing specific events from the first game, and if you haven't played those games, it's just fun because you're like, Kratos has a colorful history. But if you have, it's like, oh, I remember what they're talking about. Like, I know exactly what that line is referring to in a way that I want to get into more of that history. That's what my kind of hope for the game going forward is like, I want Kratos to deal with those old games more, where he really did some terrible stuff.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and it seems in those early hours like, some people know about it, and like you said, Atreus knows more about it, so that is cool. I'm excited to see where that goes for sure. But yeah, I mean, final thoughts. If you liked the last game, like, there's no reason not to play this one so far in these first 5 hours. Like, I've really been enjoying it. I'm very eager to continue. I want to see what happens next in a big bad way.
It is, yeah. It's interesting in that I think a lot of when this game comes out, a lot of the discussion is going to be about how similar it is in many ways to the first. And it's like, a lot of people really love that game. Great. I didn't love the first one, but it was specifically because the story didn't really connect with me. And so this one does have a different story, and I find that exciting. And like, that's kind of why I'm more into this one. But if you just hated the experience of playing the first game, this one's probably not going to win you over.
Yeah, that's true. We will have a lot more God of War Ragnarok discussion. We're doing the deepest dive, what's the phrase, Jacob? The deepest, most thorough discussion on the internet.
About God of War on the internet. That's right.
That's right. So that's coming up. So keep an eye out for that.
Though we should point out, neither Kyle nor I will be on it because we've now played what would be in the deepest dive.
That's correct. Yeah, that's kind of funny. But yeah, now Jacob and I won't be on it, unfortunately. Maybe I'll be on the last episode. We'll see. But yeah, there'll still be an awesome discussion about God of War, broken down into pieces that you can play along with and offer your own comments. It's going to be a great time. But yeah, thanks so much, Jacob, for hanging out. I'm excited to go play more God of War.
Believe me, the hardest part about playing this now is like not being able to just like group text everyone and be like, did you see when this thing happened? Because there are a lot of those moments.
Yeah, for sure. Cool. All right. Well, thanks, man. I appreciate it.
Yeah. Hi, everyone.
If you thought, hey, this video wasn't bad, well, there's a whole lot more like it on MinnMax's YouTube channel. Please help us out by subscribing to our channel and checking out the MinnMax Show podcast, also available on your favorite podcast app, the best, most thorough discussion about games on the internet with the deepest dive, our monthly community trivia show with prizes called Trivia Tower, and a whole lot more. Thanks so much for your support, everybody. All you gotta do is click that subscribe button. We'd really appreciate it.